Hi, welcome back. Miss Cody here, and today we're going to be talking about topic 12-4, which are fractions on a number line. So before we get started on our note sheet, I just want to review some basic things that you already know about number lines. So we know that number lines go on forever and always in both directions. And in third grade, when we're talking about number lines, we always are going to be starting at 0. There are more numbers to the left, but those are our negative numbers, and we're going to stay in the positives. Stay positive in third grade. So we always are going to start our number lines at 0, and then the number lines that you've been used to are 1, 2, 3, and we go all the way up to 1,000 in third grade. So that's what we've been talking about up until this point, and we've been using number lines in multiplication to show equal jumps of certain amounts, and now we're going to also be using number lines for fractions. So we know that fractions are pieces or parts of a whole. Are parts of a whole. And in this case, our whole is going to be 1. That's right. Just 1. So when we're talking about fractions on a number line, for the most part, we are going to be in just this region, talking about pieces that are just between 0 and 1, so pretty small numbers. We will work with some fractions above that, which you've already familiar with. You may know somebody who is 1.5, or 2.5, or even 3.5. You yourself might be 9.5 or 10.5. So we do know there are fractions in between each of our whole numbers, but for right now we're going to be looking at our fractions between 0 and 1. So let's go ahead and get started on our note sheet. So follow these steps anytime we need to partition number lines. And this is almost exactly like partitioning fraction bars with a couple of differences. So here I've given us fraction number lines. You may have to draw it, but I think we can handle drawing a line. So whenever we have our number line, we always want to make sure we first label our 0 and our 1, because that sets our boundaries, kind of like drawing a fraction bar. And we know where our beginning and our end is. So once we know where our 0 is and our 1 is, if we're going to draw halves, we simply draw a tick mark in the center of the line, just as I would in a fraction bar, and I can label that piece that tick mark 1/2. Above the line, I want to label each unit fraction. This piece is 1/2 and this piece is 1/2. Notice that when drawing halves, I only drew one line because that gives me 2 pieces. So my tick mark is labeled 1/2, and each of those pieces are both halves. The fraction that I have down here as 0 is actually 0 halves because there's nothing there. And then my whole would be 2 halves because we know that 2 out of 2 would be the whole thing. Alright, to make fourths, I'm going to do the same thing I did with my fraction bars in the other video. And again, I'm going to just break my first line in half, and then I would break each of those in half with a little tick mark. So now to label these, I can start at 0 and say I have 0 fourths. This tick mark is 1/4, 2 fourths, 3 fourths, and then my whole is 4 fourths. Each piece I have here, I'm going to label with my unit fractions. There's a lot of labeling that goes on with number lines. So now I know that this is 2 fourths because it's 1 2/4 distance away from 0. Now in order to make eighths, again I'm going to do the same thing I did with my fraction bars. I'm going to cut it in half first, break each half in half, and then I'm going to break each of my fourths in half again. And then I'm going to label 0/8, 1/8, 2/8, 3/8, 4/8, 5/8, 6/8, 7/8, and once again my whole should be lining up with 8/8. There's a lot of labeling like I said, but we want to make sure we label each tick mark with the fraction, and then each piece with the unit fraction. 1/8, 1/8, 1/8, 1/8, 1/8, 1/8, 1/8. Notice that the tick marks are labeled right on them. I label each tick mark, and then I'm labeling each piece on top, so in the between our lines. And we want to make sure that when we're counting our fractions, we don't count the lines, we count the pieces. Because if I count the lines, I end up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 lines. We want to count the pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pieces. All right. Now for thirds, I'm going to do the same thing I did with my fraction bar. I'm going to use my fingers to figure out where I would have 3 equal pieces. Lift one of those fingers to draw my first tick mark. Then I'm going to ignore that piece for a moment and cut this one in half. And then I can label 0 thirds, 1 third, 2 thirds. And my whole is going to be 3 thirds. This piece is 1 third, 1 third, and 1 third. All right, and then for 6, again, I'm going to make thirds, which I can use my lines right above it, and then break each third up in half. And I can label 0 sixths, 1 sixth, 2 sixths, 3 sixths, 4 sixths, 5 sixths, and then my whole again would be 6 sixths, and then I want to label each piece with a unit fraction. And yes, there is tons of labeling going on. So I should have 6 pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, so just a couple of reminders down here at the bottom. Make sure each piece is the same size. It's not going to be perfect, but we need to be as accurate as possible. And then we want to make sure we always count the pieces, not the tick marks. Because if a kid came in and just counted these, 1, 2, they would think this number line was broken up into halves. Or if they come down here and say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they would think this is in fifths. But we want to make sure we're counting the pieces, not the tick marks. All right, and that is it for 12-4. So go ahead into your workbook to do some more practicing on with fractions on a number line, and let your teacher know if you would like a mini lesson. Have a great day, and I'll meet you back here for the next video.